The water was cold, but his touch burned. I stood chest deep in the community pool, my heart hammering as Coach Ethan's hand lingered on my shoulder, his breath close enough to stir the damp hair at my neck. In that fleeting moment, under the fading Indiana sky, I knew I was drowning. Not in water, but in him. My name is Caleb Harris, 19, a lanky kid from a small town called Willow Creek, where cornfields stretch wider than dreams and secrets hide deeper than the quarry lake. I joined the swim team to escape the monotony of my life. Dead-end job at the gas station, a father who barely spoke, and a mother who prayed too much. Swimming was my rebellion, my way to feel alive, to slice through the water and leave the weight of the world behind. But Ethan? He was the current pulling me under. He wasn't like the other coaches. Ethan Parker, 25, had moved to Willow Creek a year ago, bringing with him a quiet intensity that made every practice feel like a test of more than just endurance. His sharp green eyes tracked my every stroke, his voice firm but never cruel, pushing me to be better, faster, stronger, and when he smiled, just a flicker at the corner of his mouth, it felt like a reward I didn't deserve. I'd catch myself staring at the way his damp shirt clung to his broad shoulders, or how his laugh carried across the pool deck, and I'd hate myself for it. This was Indiana, not some big city where people like me could feel what I felt without fear. That evening, practice had run late. The rest of the team had already shuffled off to the locker room, their chatter fading into the hum of crickets. I lingered, adjusting my goggles, pretending I needed one more lap. Truth was, I didn't want to leave. Not when Ethan was still there, leaning against the diving board, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Caleb," he called, his voice low, cutting through the stillness. "You're pushing too hard. You'll burn out." I ducked my head, embarrassed. "Just trying to keep up, coach." He stepped closer, the pool's edge reflecting the last streaks of sunlight across his face. "You're already there. You don't need to prove anything." His words hit me harder than they should have. Prove anything? I'd been proving myself my whole life, to my father, who thought swimming was a waste of time, to my mother, who saw sin in every shadow, to this town, where being different was a crime you paid for in whispers. I wanted to tell him that, to spill every tangled thought, but instead, I just nodded. He crouched at the pool's edge, so close I could see the faint scar above his eyebrow. "You're not like the others, Caleb," he said softly. "You swim like you're chasing something, or running from it." My throat tightened. Maybe both. He didn't laugh or brush it off. Instead, he reached out, his hand grazing my arm as he adjusted my posture. "Keep your shoulders loose," he murmured, but his fingers stayed a second too long, warm against my chilled skin. My breath caught, and for one reckless moment, I thought he felt it too. The pull, the ache, the thing we couldn't name. Then he stood abruptly, clearing his throat. "Hit the showers. We've got a big meet tomorrow." I hauled myself out of the pool, water streaming off me, my mind a mess of hope and dread. As I grabbed my towel, I glanced back. Ethan was still there, staring at the water like it held answers neither of us could find. The next day, the meet was chaos. Screaming parents, splashing water, the sharp whistle of timers. I swam my best, shaving seconds off my freestyle, but all I could think about was Ethan's hand on my arm, his words looping in my head. "You're not like the others." What did that mean? Was I imagining the way his gaze lingered, or was it just wishful thinking? After the meet, I found him in the coach's office, a cramped room smelling of chlorine and old coffee. He was hunched over paperwork, his jaw tight. I knocked lightly, and he looked up, surprised. "Good swim today," he said, but his voice was distant. "Thanks." I shifted, unsure why I'd even come. "I just wanted to say I appreciate you pushing me." He leaned back, studying me. "You don't need pushing, Caleb. You've got fire. But fire burns out if you don't control it." There it was again, that intensity, like he saw straight through me. I wanted to ask him what he meant, to demand why he kept saying things that made my chest ache. but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I mumbled something about practice and fled. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my narrow bed, the hum of the air conditioner drowning out the crickets, and replayed every moment with Ethan. The way he'd touched my arm. The way he'd said my name. I wasn't stupid. I knew what I felt, what I'd felt for years but never dared admit. But Ethan? He was my coach. Older, wiser, untouchable. And yet, every look, every word, felt like a step toward something dangerous. The next practice, I arrived early, hoping to catch him alone. The pool was empty, the air thick with the promise of rain. Ethan was already there, setting out lane markers, his movements precise. I dropped my bag and approached, my heart pounding. "Coach," I started, my voice shaky. "Can we talk?" He straightened, his eyes narrowing slightly. "About what?" I swallowed, the words tangling in my throat. "About yesterday, in the pool." For a moment he didn't move. Then he stepped closer, his voice low. "Caleb, be careful what you're asking." My pulse raced. "I just need to know if..." "Enough." His tone was sharp, but his eyes were soft, conflicted. "This isn't the place." Before I could respond, the rest of the team arrived, their voices shattering the moment. Ethan turned away, barking orders, and I was left standing there, my heart in my throat, wondering if I just ruined everything. The days that followed were torture. Ethan kept his distance, his instructions clipped, his eyes avoiding mine. I swam harder, faster, as if I could outrun the confusion, the want, the fear that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. But every time I dove into the pool, I felt him watching, and it was both a lifeline and a weight. Willow Creek wasn't kind to secrets. The town was small, its people smaller, their eyes always searching for something to judge. I'd grown up hearing the whispers, about the librarian who'd left after rumors, about the pastor's son who'd been sent away. I knew what happened to people like me, people who felt things they weren't supposed to feel. And Ethan? He was an outsider, a city boy who didn't belong here any more than I did. If anyone suspected, I didn't let myself finish the thought. One evening, after a brutal practice, I stayed late again. The sky was bruised with storm clouds, the air heavy. Ethan was in the equipment room, stacking kickboards, and I found myself walking toward him before I could stop. "Coach," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned, his expression guarded. "Caleb, go home." "I can't." The words spilled out, raw and desperate. "Not until you tell me what's going on. Why you're acting like I don't exist." He set the kickboards down, his hands flexing like he was fighting something. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then tell me." I stepped closer, my voice rising. "You said I'm not like the others. You touched me like it meant something. Was I wrong?" His jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought he'd walk away. But then he closed the distance between us, his voice low and urgent. "You weren't wrong, but this can't happen. Not here. Not now." My heart stopped. "Why not?" "Because I'm your coach, Caleb. Because this town would eat us alive. Because," he hesitated, his eyes searching mine. "Because I don't know if I can stop myself." The air between us crackled, electric and terrifying. I wanted to reach for him, to close the gap, but fear held me back. Fear of him. Fear of me. Fear of everything this town would do if it knew. "Then why did you touch me?" I whispered. "Why say those things?" He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration palpable. "Because you're in my head, Caleb. Every day. Every damn practice. I see you and I..." He stopped, shaking his head. "Go home. Please." I didn't move. "I'm not a kid. I know what I feel." His eyes darkened, a storm brewing behind them. "You think you do, but you don't know what this costs." Before I could argue, thunder rumbled outside, and rain began to pound the roof. Ethan grabbed his jacket, muttering something about locking up. I followed him out, the rain soaking us as we ran to his car. He didn't stop me when I climbed into the passenger seat, didn't say a word as he started the engine. We drove in silence, the wipers slashing through the downpour. My heart was a drumbeat, loud and relentless. When he pulled into the empty lot behind the community center, I thought he'd tell me to get out. Instead, he turned to me, his face half-shadowed. "Caleb," he said, his voice rough, "this is a mistake." "Then why are we here?" I challenged, leaning closer. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached out, his hand cupping my face. His thumb brushed my cheek, and I forgot how to breathe. When he kissed me, it was like the world split open. Soft, fierce, desperate, like he'd been holding back as long as I had. The rain pounded the car, drowning out everything but us. His hands were in my hair, mine on his chest, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But when he pulled back, his eyes were haunted. "We can't do this again," he said, his voice breaking. "Not like this." I wanted to argue, to beg, but the look on his face stopped me. He drove me home in silence, and when I got out, the rain felt colder than the pool ever had. The kiss changed everything. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep, couldn't swim without feeling the ghost of his lips on mine. Ethan acted like nothing had happened, his demeanor cold and professional, but I saw the cracks. The way his hands shook when he handed me a towel, the way his eyes flicked away when I caught him staring. We were playing a dangerous game, and I didn't know the rules. School started, adding another layer of chaos. I was a sophomore at the community college, studying nothing in particular, just trying to figure out who I was outside of Willow Creek. But the town had a way of pulling you back, its roots deep and unforgiving. My parents noticed my distraction, my mother's prayers growing louder, my father's silences heavier. I started avoiding home, spending more time at the pool, hoping for a moment alone with Ethan. One afternoon, I found him in the coach's office, the door ajar. He was on the phone, his voice tight. "I know, Mom. I'm trying. But it's not that simple." I hesitated, then knocked. He hung up quickly, his expression unreadable. "What do you need, Caleb?" "You," I said before I could stop myself. His face softened, then hardened again. "Don't. We talked about this." "No, you talked." I listened. I stepped inside, closing the door. "You kissed me, Ethan. You can't just pretend it didn't happen." He stood, pacing the small room. "You think I want to pretend? You think this is easy for me? I moved here to start over, to get away from everything. And then you—" He stopped, his hands balling into fists. "You're making it impossible." "Then let it be impossible," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm not asking you to fix me. I just want you to see me." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the war in his eyes, want versus fear, hope versus duty. "I see you, Caleb," he whispered. "That's the problem." Before I could respond, the door swung open, and Jake, one of the other swimmers, stood there, his eyes narrowing. "Coach, everything okay?" Ethan stepped back, his mask sliding into place. "Fine. Caleb was just leaving." I left, my heart pounding, Jake's suspicious glance burning into my back. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd been caught. Even if Jake hadn't seen anything, Willow Creek was too small for secrets, and I was starting to feel the walls closing in. The next week, Ethan canceled practice, citing a family emergency. I texted him, called him, but he didn't respond. Panic set in. Had I pushed too far? Had Jake said something? I drove to his apartment, a small place on the edge of town, and found him sitting on the steps, his head in his hands. "Ethan," I said, my voice breaking. "What's wrong?" He looked up, his eyes red. "My brother. He's sick. Cancer. I have to go back to Chicago." My stomach dropped. "For how long?" "I don't know." He stood, his shoulders slumped. "Maybe for good." The words hit like a punch. "You're leaving." "I don't have a choice, Caleb. My family needs me." What about me? I hated how small my voice sounded. How selfish. He reached for me, then stopped himself. You deserve better than this. Better than hiding. Better than me. I wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong. But he turned away, disappearing into his apartment. I drove home in a daze, the weight of his words crushing me. He was leaving, and I was losing the only person who'd ever made me feel whole. Ethan was gone for 2 weeks. No calls, no texts, just silence. I threw myself into swimming, pushing my body to the breaking point, as if I could outswim the pain. The team noticed my intensity, but no one asked questions. Not even Jake, though his sidelong glances told me he hadn't forgotten what he'd seen. When Ethan returned, he was different. Thinner, quieter, his eyes shadowed with grief. Practice resumed, but he barely spoke to me, his instructions delivered to the group. I wanted to hate him for it, but I couldn't. Not when I saw the way his hands trembled, the way he flinched at loud noises. Whatever had happened in Chicago had broken something in him. One evening, I cornered him in the locker room after everyone else had left. Talk to me, I demanded. You owe me that. He sighed, leaning against the lockers. My brother's stable for now, but it's bad, Caleb. I might have to go back. Then why are you here? I asked, my voice cracking. Why come back at all? Because of you. The words were barely audible, but they hit me like a tidal wave. I tried to stay away. I tried to do the right thing, but I couldn't. I stepped closer, my heart racing. Then don't push me away. He looked at me, his eyes raw. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about us. If anyone finds out, if Jake or anyone else talks, this town will destroy us. I've seen it happen before. Then we'll be careful, I said, desperate. We'll figure it out. He laughed, a bitter sound. You're 19, Caleb. You think love conquers all, but it doesn't. Not here. I grabbed his hand, refusing to let go. Then we'll leave. We'll go somewhere else. Somewhere we can be us. For a moment, he didn't pull away. His fingers tightened around mine, and I thought he might agree. But then he shook his head. I can't ask you to give up your life for me. You're not asking, I said. I'm offering. Before he could respond, the door banged open, and my father stood there, his face a mask of rage. Caleb, get away from him. Now. My blood ran cold. Dad. I heard enough, he snapped, his eyes blazing as he glared at Ethan. You're done here, coach. Pack your things and get out of Willow Creek. Ethan didn't flinch. Mr. Harris, this isn't what you think. Don't lie to me, my father roared. I know what I saw. You're not dragging my son into your filth. I stepped between them, my voice shaking. Dad, stop. This is my choice. He looked at me like I was a stranger. You're confused, Caleb. He's twisted your head. But we'll fix this. You're coming home. I didn't move. No, I'm not. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face twisted with something I'd never seen before. Disgust, betrayal, fear. He turned and stormed out, leaving me trembling in his wake. Ethan grabbed my shoulders, his voice urgent. Caleb, you can't stay here. Not after this. I'm not leaving you, I said, tears burning my eyes. Not now. Not ever. He pulled me close, his arms a shield against the world. For the first time, I didn't care who saw. I didn't care what they'd say. All I cared about was him. The fallout was swift and brutal. By morning, the news had spread. Willow Creek's gossip mill worked faster than the internet. My father didn't speak to me, my mother left voicemails filled with scripture, and the swim team avoided me like I was contagious. Jake, predictably, had been the one to talk, his whispers turning suspicion into truth. Ethan was fired that day. The community center cited inappropriate conduct, but everyone knew what it meant. He packed his office in silence, the other coaches watching from a distance. I found him there, surrounded by boxes, his face a mask of resignation. I'm sorry, I said, my voice breaking. This is my fault. He shook his head. No, Caleb. This is who we are. This is what happens when you don't hide. I wanted to scream, to tear the town apart for what it was doing to us. But all I could do was stand there, helpless, as he taped up the last box. Come with me, he said suddenly, his eyes meeting mine. To Chicago. I'm going back to take care of my brother. But I want you there. With me. My heart stopped. You mean it? He nodded, a faint smile breaking through. I'm done running. If you're willing to fight for this, for us, I am too. I didn't hesitate. I'm in. We left that night, driving through the rain, the lights of Willow Creek fading in the rearview mirror. Chicago was a world away, loud, bright, alive in ways I'd never imagined. Ethan's brother, Sam, welcomed me with a weak smile, his hospital room filled with cards and flowers. He was younger than Ethan, barely 20, but his eyes held the same fire. You must be Caleb, he said, his voice hoarse. Ethan talks about you non-stop. I blushed, glancing at Ethan, who looked away, embarrassed. Over the next few months, we built a life small, imperfect, but ours. I enrolled in a new college, found a job at a coffee shop, and spent evenings with Ethan and Sam, laughing, fighting, living. Sam's cancer went into remission, and the day we got the news, Ethan kissed me in the hospital hallway, not caring who saw. Willow Creek was a memory, its judgment a distant echo. My parents never called, but I sent them letters, hoping one day they'd understand. Maybe they never would, but I'd made my choice, not just Ethan, but myself. For the first time, I wasn't running or chasing. I was standing still, exactly where I belonged. In the quiet moments, when it was just me and Ethan, we'd sit by Lake Michigan, the water stretching endless before us. He'd take my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin, and I'd feel it again. That pull, that fire, that breath-stealing certainty that we'd found something worth fighting for. And in those moments, I knew. Love doesn't conquer all, but it's enough to start.